All right, well, welcome everybody here. Today we're here to talk about the Deepwatch NEXA. It's sort of fireside chat. Um, we have today the CISO from Xactly, Matt Sharp, and our very own Parth Shaw here, the Senior Director of Product Management here at Deepwatch. Super excited to have both these guys here. I want to just say a couple housekeeping, or at least one housekeeping thing. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We can answer them as they come up if it's pertinent to the situation or if the opportunity arises. Otherwise, we'll circle back to them towards the end. But then with that, I will throw it over to you, Parth. You're on mute. Yep, there you go.
Welcome, everyone, to Deepwatch's first public webinar on Deepwatch NEXA, our next generation approach to agentic AI. I am thrilled to be joined by Matt. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So, real quickly on the agenda, we're going to first start by having a fun chat with Matt about the interplay of AI and humans. From there, we'll dive into the various AI initiatives that Deepwatch is driving towards, along with a sneak peek into a demo. Finally, we'll talk about roadmap, some of the architecture and security considerations with our AI, and finally, some resources for all of you to walk away with today. So, before we get started, we're going to start with a quick poll. I'll hand it over to you, Charlie.
All right. I'm going to throw this up here. You guys answer. I'm going to give this about a minute or so to stay up here. We really just kind of want to see where you guys are today in your journey. Give about 30 more seconds. Loving the answers coming through. These are great, guys. All right. About 5 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end this one.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
So,
Matt, before we dive into Nexa, I want to establish something very foundational. Deepwatch's entire AI strategy is built on the belief that security is not a people replacement problem, but really a reinforcement problem. Our brand literally is about precision MDR driven by AI and humans. And you've spent a lot of time, Matt, thinking about how the CISO's role has evolved. You've even captured that in your book, The CISO Evolution. Let's start there. Next slide, Charlie.
Yeah, okay. The book. Um, yeah, so we wrote this book. It's interesting. We actually published this book in March of 22, right? And then November of 22 is sort of the beginning of the open AI conquering the world from an agent from a Gen AI perspective, and obviously that led to an evolution of agentic. I mean, my take is we have to be connected to the business. And that sort of permeates the book. My take is that we have to be leaders in the technology development and rollout. And at the time, I think we were more focused on cloud. So there's a lot of cloud centric examples in the book, but I think it's totally applicable to the onslaught of the next wave of technology. So if you think back over the years, it was like wireless was a thing, mobile was a thing, cloud was a thing. Now it's this, it was Gen AI, and now it's moving on to agents. So from my perspective, we have to understand the tech, and then we have to be an enabler of the business. And that means understanding what this tech can actually deliver on behalf of the business. What else would I say about the book? Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of pillars, and we talk about business fundamentals, leadership, and communication. And I think the contrast here is there is a handful of things that I think are strategic and will stay and remain strategic in the realm of the humans. And so I think I don't know that we actually talk about that directly in the book, but some of the more strategic components of the cybersecurity domain, I don't see being automated in the short term.
Thanks, Matt. And like when you look at the wave of AI and security, how do you think it aligns with that evolution that you're talking about?
Uh, what the wave of so I think what we're saying, what's the wave? My immediate thought is the Gartner wave, and that we're at the peak of inflated expectations. But when in terms of wave, uh, I think what we're starting to think about is actually how can we make greater use of this technology, not just to deliver value to the business, but also to get our jobs done and to make sure that we scale with the onslaught of technology. I mean, I was just looking at LinkedIn before we jumped on, and our CEO announced our agents for transforming incentive compensation management are now actively deployed in GA, and that happened 2 hours ago. So a lot of the work that we've been doing behind the scenes has been not just looking at, oh my goodness, here's the innovation that our team is trying to deliver to the market, but at the same time, how do we keep pace and enable the business to keep producing this kind of innovation without slowing? And we happen to be in a SaaS company, but there are other business models where that's applicable. And I think the answer is in Malcolm Harkin's 9 box, which is actually featured in our book. And the 9 box, yeah, thank you. So I think the 9 box really tells the story, right? On the left hand, you've got different kinds of controls: prevent, detect, and respond. And on the x-axis, you have the friction. And so what we've seen pretty consistently, and this Malcolm came up with this years and years and years ago. He used to be the CISO of Intel, and then he came from actually a finance background. And so his perspective on the world, the lens that he approaches cybersecurity, to me has always been really interesting. And yeah, just sort of self-evident. They're looking to shift down and left for lower cost, producing a lower risk outcome with limited liabilities. And so I think agents give us another opportunity to expand a number of things that we can kind of stuff into that lower left corner. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I know, when we were starting to look at some of this data, Matt, we started to run a really fun exercise on how much work could be automated leveraging AI. Next slide, Charlie. And I know we had done this analysis across just various different roles in your organization, and we obviously used AI for this. And
Yeah.
AI came up with these pretty large numbers about the potential of what could be automated across these roles in terms of the mechanical pieces that they had to do. I'd love to, hear your reaction when we first started to dive into this.
Yeah, I mean, my team's watching. Guys, we're not displacing you. Um, I think my initial gut was that's nonsense. Like this is just these are too inflated. Like this is way too optimistic. Um, yeah, and I started to think about, so we're backed by Vista. Vista has done a lot of research and is a very strong proponent of capturing an increased percentage of value via the SaaS platform. If you look at their platform, it's their portfolio, it's 100 SaaS companies across all industries. And so they're very bullish on the ability for this wave of innovation to lead to greater economic outcomes for their entire portfolio. Um, and despite that, uh, they're also trying to ground themselves in reality. And so we've seen a lot of, Bain and McKinsey and Boston Consulting and other kind of consulting deliverables come across. And my first read on this was like, why are these so high? These seem to be stratospheric compared to the results that you actually see being reported in the market today. So I was pretty honestly when we first looked at this, I was like, I think at Parth I said, "There's no way, that's bullshit." I think that's what I said to you out of the gate. So yeah, but at the end of the day, I do think dissecting the group's roles into jobs to be done, and then translating those jobs to be done into potentially one or multiple agents, and striving for what does the workforce of the future look like is absolutely essential for our go forward strategy, not just on training, but also on talent. Who are we hiring today, and what are we going to look like in 2 years? And I think the other thing is we're starting to make some shifts. So we're taking some of these roles that are highly automatable and we're starting to focus the energy of those folks on tackling the learning curve around MCP or tackling the learning curve on agentic orchestration or agentic identity or whatever. So I don't think it's a displacement of humans, but I do think it will totally refactor the day to day, the things that people are doing on a day to day have to shift.
Thanks for sharing that insight, Matt. And that's pretty spot on. Next slide, please. Just because a lot of work could be automated, the truth is there's a lot of hype and the industry is nowhere close to that today. Here was an example that I think we looked at together, Matt, from Anthropic. They looked at a lot of millions of conversations, and what they learned is a lot of the use cases today are augmentative. AI is really more of a co-pilot, not in this autopilot mode.
Yeah, that seems to resonate. Like we're doing things like using Gen AI to help us recraft risk acceptance forms or to accelerate how we document privacy impact assessments or how to analyze inbound, SOC 2 reports using natural language processing and a handful of things like that. But we still need people in those roles. We're still even as we look at sort of next gen DLP solutions, I think we're looking at DLP solution plus headcount as opposed to just like DLP, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The next slide, Charlie. I know you also brought up like McKinsey, and one of the things that we were looking at was, there was a study done at a Fortune 500 company, and after starting to roll out AI, really the productivity gains were just 2 to 5% in the first 3 months, and then 6 to 9 months it was around 15%. They expected a lot more. What developers wanted was automation, but they got acceleration. And then as they started to dive deeper, they started to realize that there were a lot of bottlenecks in the holistic process altogether. And reliability and workflow redesign are important aspects of starting to roll that AI out. How are you seeing some of that in practice at Xactly, Matt?
I mean, so we're leveraging Cursor in some rapid prototyping functions. We have an AI labs group. I think what we've seen is a lot of the code that's produced from a vibe coding perspective is not maintainable code in the long term. And so although it can get you 80% of the way, the long term is it incurs a huge amount of tech debt. I think we've seen 20 to 40% productivity gains across the development group, and I think adoption rates are continuing to expand. So it's good, no doubt. Like 20% of any department is good, but given that it's the largest, they carry the largest headcount across the group, the business is quite happy about that performance outcome. I think. What else would I tell you? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about some of the barriers. The other thing I think is really interesting is we're continuing to experiment. Like there's no cooked best practice on how to do this stuff. And so the number of times that I've heard it's probably too early to hitch our wagon to a single horse, and how we're multi-tracking many different experiments. I think the real key for an org is being able to rapidly experiment in a controlled fashion and then capture those experiments and translate those into returns at scale. And that's the part that's been really challenging. Like we have a shadow AI initiative, and if you look at the long tail of shadow AI stuff, what you see is concentrated adoption across a handful of spots within the business, and then you see this long tail of other experiments that are happening. And no doubt in that long tail of experience, there are great insights and strong productivity for individuals, but being able to harness that and actually like return those returns back to the business as opposed to just give those returns to the individual, I think is something that we are learning how to do in a productive way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And 20% is pretty amazing, Matt. Next slide. From an ROI standpoint, I think you make a good point. There's a lot of investment, and while certain individuals might be starting to see those benefits, in general, that ROI is something that companies are slowly starting to realize, but it's nowhere in terms of where we expect it to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that is interesting, so we've done board approved cohorts of AI investments and then trying to track ROI on them. And it's very difficult because an agentic use case in the customer support is different than an agentic use case in finance. and what is the actual like outcome? It's not, or even in engineering, is it lines of code? Is it features developed? Is it uh, pushes to production in terms of like code velocity? Like, what is the thing that, how do you demonstrate the ROI? And then I think the other thing is just because a dev produces great outcome in an efficient way, that still has to translate into a sale, customer acquiring that piece of software and then actually like feeling the benefit, right? So I think part of the ROI challenge is inconsistent denominator across the different ROI investments in the business. And the other thing that I think is challenging is there's a lead time to recognizing that ROI. And you see this in business all the time, right? You invest ahead of profits. Like that's a thing. That's why Twitter wasn't profitable for ages, for example.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. I think kind of rounding that whole discussion out really well, we ran this fun exercise, using Clayton Christensen's job to be done style methodology. The truth was that while there's a lot of potential, the reality is just not there. And it seems like there's just more things that organizations need to work through, but we're starting to make a crack. We're starting to head in the right direction, you'd say, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing bright spots for sure. And I think sitting back and waiting for waiting for the narrative to shift is probably the wrong strategy. Again, I'm in a company that just this morning released an entire narrative for sales performance management and the benefits of agentic use cases there. So maybe I'm, drank too much of the Kool-Aid or biased in the wrong direction. But I, I, I think I think tackling the learning curve and experimenting and workforce enablement in order to understand how this tech works, understand what the limitations are, and how to really harness it is only going to happen through mistakes and errors. And hopefully, you're guiding your company and your teams through that process. So then, when you look at the work that we've done specifically with Deepwatch, um, I mean, I think we've definitely improved our access to data. Our insights are more penetrating, and the flow of the conversation happens in more real time, and that allows us to avoid this, second and third follow-on meetings and stuff like that. So, uh, am I going to my CFO and saying I can give you back 20% of my budget because we didn't have to have 3 meetings about how to remediate these vulns? No, but am I realizing firsthand that wow, that was way more efficient than it has been in the past? Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that brings us to a really important takeaway. Next slide. The SOC and the security teams of the future, isn't about fewer people doing the same work, right? It's about the same people starting to do more higher purpose work. Even when we looked at this analysis of the jobs to be done, what could be automated versus what couldn't, and what actually elevates humans. I'd love to get your take on this, Matt, because I know you live and breathe kind of driving that business alignment in your organization, not just yourself, but even members of your team.
Yeah, it's interesting. You put this up, and I'm thinking about. I just got an email from Andreessen Horowitz and Joel De La Garza, who's like one of the partners in doing investing in cyber on that team. Just had a comment in their newspaper or whatever. Um, but yeah, I think that's right. We have to refactor the way that the teams are functioning. And I think, the great example is we just put our head of SOC through a business acumen class at Wharton. And the reason that we're doing that is because I want to make sure that Amit is carrying the narrative to the business and is a champion of the conversation in the same ways that I would hold that. And so it gives him the opportunity for greater executive exposure, and it helps us have stronger impact when we're influencing stakeholders across the business. And I would just say, uh, again, like we started at the top of the call, I don't think that the strategy goes away, but I do think that there's proven. Actually, this guy Ethan Mollick in Co-Intelligence, I think he's a Wharton guy actually. He talks about leveraging generative AI to expand or improve the way that you do what's the word? Um, your brainstorming, so you can bring more ideas to the table, and then you can select from those narrower sets of ideas. And then I think there's other research from MIT and stuff that highlights how too much utilization of generative AI can actually kind of constrain you. And I think when you have if you have innovative cyber companies that are pursuing blue oceans, if they're all using the same generative AI to produce the same ideas for the same business models, then we end up with a lot of the same. So on one hand, I think the Gen AI can really push us, and on the other hand, I think too much over reliance on it can actually cap or constrain your ability to be innovative. So my guess is in the next 5 years, the guys who are the we just saw Wiz have a great outcome with Google. The folks who pursue the next great Wiz style outcome uh, probably didn't get their business model ideas from ChatGPT. Yeah.
That's a good point. Awesome. That was great. We have one more poll, Charlie, but before we dive into that poll, did you want to share the results of the previous one?
Sure. Absolutely. So let's
Well,
see.
that's interesting.
Here's you guys can see those.
Yep.
So yeah, great stuff.
Awesome. Great stuff.
All right.
Cool.
I'm gonna stop that one and then launch the next poll. So, and then I'll share the results for that. So, which sock challenge resonates most with your organization today? Give this another minute or so. All right, another 20 seconds or so. Some good answers here. All right, I'm going to end this poll and then I'll share the results. You guys can see that?
Yeah, very interesting. So there is a lot of difficulty in operationalizing AI and also a theme of just a lot of these other issues, all of them. Very insightful.
Oh,
Yeah, it's interesting. We did when we started to sort of push on ours, the different use cases. I think Francis Odom and a handful of the. I like to look at the investment community and see where they're placing their bets because I think um, I don't know. I think they provide earlier signal than you get from a value-added reseller, right? Like if I go to GuidePoint or CDW or whoever we happen to be buying from, I think they tend to have really strong offerings for concentration of vendors. But I think the investment community, whether it's Ballistic or I think Dell has had some good bets. I think obviously the Israeli investors, Merlin and YL and CyberStarts or whatever. I think they tend to have really strong signal, and so for me, paying attention to where they're placing bets and how big those bets are is an interesting sort of analysis. And this guy Francis Odom has done a good job of sort of analyzing, and I think his narrative is very aligned with the audience here, right? It's like there's sprinkling of people trying to automate different phases of the SOC maturity, and then I think there are people that recognize that there's challenges across the board.
Indeed. That's interesting. It's a great early signal to look at the investment community. Thanks for sharing that. I actually was just taking notes on the side, looking up Francis Odom. So some homework I'll do after. But awesome. I wanted to now dive into Deepwatch's AI strategy. At the very, very heart is elevating the customer experience. I know, Matt, you're living some of this where we're working towards building experiences that, tie together a lot of agents starting to do tasks together, always having a human in the loop so that it's not fully autonomous, but rather we always have that human in the loop to bring in that strategic guidance that's needed from time and time again. And last but not the least, everything the AI does, doing it in a very secure and explainable fashion. And so we have a very, very exciting roadmap. Next slide. We have 6 agents that are a part of our Nexa agentic ecosystem. You'll see 2 swim lanes here on the top are agents that we're building that help automate tasks that are done by SOC analysts. And the second row being customer-facing experience agents that we'll be building. I would think about the first row as working behind the scenes very, very hard. The investigative agent can look at how we've analyzed other tickets and start to help build an analysis as soon as a new ticket is fired, where based on previous learnings, it's able to start to connect relevant dots. Our narrative agent actually starts to bring that consistency in all of the tickets that go to our customers today, and who, the what, the where, the why, and are there any other necessary actions that we need to take? And then the last one, the active response agent. That one is our agent that's going to go out and following a matrix based on the customer's preferences of what to remediate, when to remediate, and how to remediate it. It goes out and it does that active response. These are all going to be agents that will be available to all of our MDR customers out of the box, every single one of these AI SOC analyst agents. Now, going to the second row, and the more interesting one, there's a lot of AI SOC vendors in the market that are building AI SOC agents, and we're doing the same, but we want to go a step farther. We're also building customer experience agents that allow our customers to interact with our AI agents using a natural language interface. The CTEM agent is one that is available if you have our CTEM offering, and that's the one, Matt, I know we have been using together with you.
Yep.
The CTEM agent's entire goal is to start to identify material risk, identify the top priorities, and then start to action that out. I don't know, anything you wanted to add on that front, Matt, from your experience?
No, I mean, this is consistent with what we've been thinking. My narrative to the group is, look, we're PE backed. We have caps on OpEx and CapEx, so we can't expect to infinitely grow this. I'm never going to be Amazon with a team of 500 or 700 or something like that. We're just never going to get there. So the path forward for us is managers of agents, and I think if you're thinking about like career growth and what does that look like as individuals inside of the cyber org, I think managers of agents is applicable at any size and scale of the company going forward. So yeah, this is very consistent with jobs to be done, cherry pick the things where we think we can get the strongest ROI, and then convert those into agents. We started to experiment, and to your point on the CTEM agent, like we saw a year and a half or 2 years ago that we were gonna pursue the security data lake, and the challenge that we had been facing was how do we put natural language on top of structured data, meaning our databases, right? Because I think it's pretty straightforward to get OpenAI to read your unstructured data and do a decent job. And those are some of the use cases we talked about earlier. But getting to structured data and having consistent outcomes actually quite complex. And so, like we were building inside the org because in parallel, Xactly is releasing these agents that does many of the same things: get data for sales reps, enrich that data with other context, help you configure a system, whatever the things are. Yeah, so we wanted to know how that stuff works so we could secure it, and also we could see the upside potential for converting people's jobs from mundane repeatable tasks to adding the value that we talked about. So yeah, in the CTEM, that experience, if we think about the experience, I mean, I wasn't thinking about experience per se, I was thinking about outcomes, right? And so I think you heard me say a lot of times, Parth, what I need to be able to do is to influence stakeholders in different ways. So I have to influence at the executive level for capital allocation, right? So if I have a conversation with my CFO and that lands flat, I don't get the head count. But if I have that successfully, then I get the head count. Now I've got head count and they're finding stuff and we've got to action that stuff. And so I have to convince the head of corporate IT or the head, the CTO or whoever the application the department owner is, or maybe even our partners person on the third party risk program or whatever. I've got to influence these stakeholders to take an action. And so it's more about like driving a behavioral outcome. And so one of the things that we found that had this like long observe, orient, decide, act, OODA, like pretty traditional from the SOC world, right? These long OODA loops or these long feedback loops was we would have information about a vulnerability or a series of vulnerabilities impacting our assets, and we would know that they're applicable on relevant business critical applications, and we could even highlight how much revenue was at stake or how many data records and how big a data breach if this got compromised would look. But mobilizing people from that point to, okay, we have the information and we can take concrete action and delegate this into our teams was still challenging. And so that influence factor, I think, has been really enriched. And that's probably the outcome, I would say, but experience, maybe you would say, that we've been working on driving. I don't know, is that I don't know if that's consistent from your perspective, actually, because you sit across the table and you you listen to me say stuff, but you probably like what's the alternative perspective here, Parth?
I mean,
Is it
no, truth is, driving that alignment, essentially getting to that outcome, I know took us time. And it was interesting because it kind of went down that same path, right? We understood what was materially important, but then the building alignment took some time. But once we built that machinery, we started to drive down meaningful reduction in material risk. And now I think, we did the process without AI, and now with AI, it's almost as if like your teams don't even reach out to me anymore. It's just a question away for them. And I think that that was interesting, just starting to go through those learnings. And to your point, we had a lot of touch points that we've started to now remove all those friction points to be able to drive this machinery better. So very aligned. We're calling them experience agents, but really the goal is to drive the right outcome
mm,
for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think the other thing would be like I think you guys have a slide somewhere that says democratize, right? I think maybe it's the next one. Uh, that actually does seem right to me. And for me, democratizing meaning making it available or ubiquitous for stakeholders. So we have obviously at the top level project management happening. It's scaled agile, and then inside of that we have engineers and developers and DevOps and SRE. And so working with each of those different groups, like they have different tools, different skills, and different paradigms. And so the way that they want to see data or the things that actually enable them to take action, or the things that inhibit action, like team structure, technology, access to information, is slightly different across those teams. And so navigating some of those constraints with the Nexa agent, I think is productive because it gives folks information more readily available at their fingertips. And it's the information that they actually need without having to come to me and set up a meeting and then, or follow up on Slack or whatever the thing is. So,
Awesome. Thanks for
yeah.
sharing that, Matt. Right, so I'll go to the fifth agent, and I promise you, we'll give you guys a quick demo shortly so you can see some of this in action. That fifth agent is our detection advisor agent. You've deployed a lot of detections, and sometimes we have questions about coverage. We have questions about, hey, if there are certain detections, why are they not enabled? Which logs are missing? Being able to debug that and being able to drive the best possible coverage. And our last agent is our ticket analyzer agent. This is where our agent will analyze the tickets and actually start to produce answers and response recommendations. And so with that, we'll do a quick poll before we dive into the demo. I'll hand it over to you, Charlie.
All right, let's go ahead and we'll launch this poll. Again, we'll give it another minute. So what's your biggest concern about deploying agentic AI in your SOC? You guys go ahead and rock and roll with that. Again, I'll share the results once we're done. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions here, we've got Matt from for the webinar here, so it would be great. He's CISO, lot depth of knowledge.
For you guys to determine. Just the same way when you interact with Gemini or ChatGPT, you can ask the question and then just validate that I'm not feeding you a line of I'm not hallucinating. That's the word.
Yeah. All right, about 10 more seconds, guys.
He's had too much espresso, so we've got to fact check.
You never have too much espresso, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm definitely going to have some more espresso after this.
All right, I'm going to end it and share the results here so you guys can see.
Okay. Overwhelmingly
Is
trust
it reliable? Yeah,
and reliability
reliability.
and security and compliance. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. So now we'll dive into the demo. Next slide, please. So, one of the things that every customer here experiences is there is a new threat that's emerging, and then we publish an advisory. Hey, there's something happening in the wild, and here are recommended mitigations. But the one thing we hear about all the time is, so what? How does this impact me? So Charlie, if you could stop sharing so I could pull up the demo. But Matt, I'd love to get your perspective. You probably get a lot of these advisories. What goes on in your mind and what's your experience?
I mean, at first I'm like, oh, okay, like we'll onboard a new vendor. Hey, this is interesting. Wiz does this, right? We get constant barrage of stuff from Wiz. My first thought is, my environment, so don't just tell me that's something like I can download an RSS feed. Tell me, like, is it applicable? And more interestingly, because we spent the time to draw clear lines between core segments and revenue streams in my business, you should tell me not just does it impact me, but that it impacts X, Y, or Z revenue stream, in my opinion, right? So like Xactly is pretty easy. We have a handful of different products, and so we segment on products. But other businesses, like if you download the SEC, the 10Ks, annual reports, you can analyze the business and you can see what segments are being reported. Wouldn't it be cool to say, hey, there's a core vulnerability on this critical segment of our business, putting XYZ, 50% of our revenue at risk or something like that? That's a much more interesting conversation. It goes much further in the narrative than, hey, we've got a vulnerability on the Jenkins server in the whatever cloud or something like that, right? So for me, I think connecting not just here's a vulnerability to does it impact my systems, but more specifically, what's the business outcome that we're concerned about? And doing that translation, I think, becomes achievable with some training of your agents or assistants or whatever you want to call them. I think of assistant as information and agent as action. And so in this case, I would say assistant, but yeah.
Thanks for sharing that perspective. And honestly, that's exactly where we want to go, is starting to leverage AI the right way and leveraging what we know about an environment to produce an outcome that helps you be able to mobilize as fast as possible. And so with that, I'll share my screen. Here we have the Deepwatch platform. As you know, we launch a lot of these threat advisories. Recently, we had shared one about, Microsoft's SharePoint issue. And what you see today is you'll see an advisory. What are the different things that you need to know? What are the
Yeah.
things that we're still learning about? And we'll continue to send those updates. But where I want to focus is this orange button on the bottom, the business impact analysis. Where we want to go is with the click of a button, we start to have all of our agents go out and give us a snapshot view of what's going on across the environment. So in this example, for this 0-day vulnerability that's out, the overall risk is high. Well, why is it high? Our agents have gone and given us a high-level snapshot of, hey, the C10 agent is saying there's 42 0-day assets that have been identified across global segments, and 11 of them are externally accessible, and 6 of them are actually missing EDR coverage altogether. Okay. Our second agent, our detection advisor agent, said, hey, there's 5 detections, 3 of which have been active in your environment, but 2 are not active, and we recommend that you activate them. And the 2 detections that are available and not activated are web shell console usage and the security enabled Azure group. And we'll dive into why they're not enabled in a second. This is really more of an executive snapshot. The third agent helps us understand, hey, ever since the 0 day was launched, we're actually actively tracking 2 tickets that are ongoing that we've escalated to you that are tied, likely tied to the 0 day vulnerability. Okay, let's dive a step deeper. Now, our agents are going to go back and give us that double click, give us additional details as to what's going on in the environment and where do we need to act. I think, Matt, some of this might even look familiar. We have
Mm.
11 critical assets, and here's the breakdown across our segments. And if you have an MEDR with us, we'll have already have deployed an agent and gotten that covered. But if not, with the click of a button, we can send a ticket over so we can start to cover those coverage gaps and start to make sure that our EDR is deployed there and we're listening.
The other sort of situation that I think this sort of naturally flows into is you get like the advisory takes place, and then you get a barrage of inbound questions from a handful of people with relatively mature third-party risk programs. And like, oh God, now I got to figure out like, code. They're usually celebrity vulns like the Log4js or the Heartbleeds or whatever. But I think the question then comes inevitably first from the customers, and then like a few days later somebody on your senior team starts asking the same, hey, I heard about this thing. Are we vulnerable? And so I don't know, like I'm just imagining having the ability to click through this and say, yeah, well, we have to enable some detections, or we've already enabled detections and we're waiting for results, or we identified gaps in coverage. We're closing those gaps and then enhancing our detections will give you some like it's just a much better response. I mean, in a perfect world, you have the right coverage. I know you're trying to like expose features that you have that are really cool or whatever, but like in a perfect world, you already have the coverage, you already have the proper detections deployed, and you're able to say, no, we don't have this thing, and we're confident that we don't have it because we've got these 4 detections in play or something like that. But that's the other scenario where I could see this being pretty useful.
Absolutely. And so once we understand exposure, our second agent, the detection advisor agent, saying, hey, there's 5 detections, 3 of which are enabled, 2 of them are not enabled. And the only reason they're not enabled is because we're missing relevant logs. As soon as those logs start coming our way, those will get automatically enabled. There's even a custom detection that we can deploy in your environment that is also pertinent in this case. And now with the click of a button, you can work with, human in the loop, work with a member of our team, start to get that data coming in so that we can get our eyes and ears on it. And finally, our third agent, our ticketing agent, is tracking actively what were the issues or escalated tickets that we created that are related to the 0 day vulnerability. What's awesome here is that for this ticket, you click into it, you get the entire analysis of what's going on, what were the indicators of compromise with the 5 Ws, the who, what, when, where, why. And in this case, interestingly enough, we also have our response agent asking for approval. We've set up a matrix, and as per the matrix, for this specific host isolation, we need your approval based on how you set it up. And now with the click of a button, we can have that agent go and do that remediation.
I'm curious that like does the platform does interactions with your ticketing, but what about my internal ticketing? It does that too? I don't know. Just because I'm not using this piece, right?
Yeah.
What is the internal ticketing do? Like, can we connect it to mine?
Yeah, in a ServiceNow type scenario, which is where a lot of our customers are, it would, in the case where we'd want the customer to open up, like let's say we had to create a ticket for them to go deploy an agent because they don't have MEDR,
Mm,
it would be in their service now. If it's something that our team needs to do, it would be within the same shared service now that we have with the customer.
yeah, I got you.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it is cool.
Awesome. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Charlie to pull up the slides. Awesome. So we have one more poll, opposed demo poll. Charlie?
Yep. So let's see, which use case would make the biggest difference in your SOC operations this quarter? Great information, guys.
Hmm.
Another 20-ish seconds or so.
These are the jobs to be done, mapped to the agents. Which agent is going to drive the most value? Yeah, it's a cool question.
All right, I think it's slowing down. I'm going to end this poll and then share some results.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised. Vulnerability context and prioritization is 36%.
Hmm.
And then threat hunting and alert auto enrichment, those make a lot of sense. Interesting. Matt, love to get your takeaway.
Yeah, this feels right. I mean, I think once we get triage and enrichment down, which I think creates a lot of noise and is probably where most of the friction and fatigue comes in for the SOC. I think threat hunting is more interesting. I mean, we've been having conversations about how to really challenge threat hunting and coming up with actually using Gen AI to come up with more interesting threat hunt targets and objectives. So that sort of seems to resonate. And then obviously we talked about the whole threat and vulnerability program, and that was a big focus of our work together.
Mhm.
So it seems to resonate. I think uh, I mean detection gap analysis. This is the I would have expected to see a little bit more there, honestly. Like we spend a lot of time on all of our controls talking about what is coverage before what is the findings, because if I've got no findings and crappy coverage, then it doesn't matter. And if I've got great coverage but have a lot of findings, at least I have the ability to then start using the agents to help me eat the elephant. How big is the bread box, and what are the core priorities? What is the key exposures? Am I going to filter on patchable, exploitable, reachable? Like how do I dissect this elephant? What are the groups that are applicable? Which dev teams inside of which priority concepts can we carve some time out for? Those kinds of things. So honestly, I would have expected to see a little bit more focus on the coverage. Here's what's for sure. If you look at the insurance questionnaire, when they ask you to fill out an insurance questionnaire, no doubt they ask questions about whether or not you have strong MDR coverage. And the reason they ask that is because if you misrepresent that, then they're not going to cover your claim, right? So I don't know. I think that one I would have expected to see a little higher, but
Thanks for sharing your take. Awesome. Next slide, Charlie. Awesome. So real quickly, I think Matt, you brought this up earlier too, but one of the big goals as a part of this elevating of the customer experience is to democratize that security intelligence so that, and we're seeing this live in practice as starting to interact with more and more members of your team wanting access. Uh, we also really wanted to drive that decision making. How can we make it so that, when something happens, we're able to answer that "so what" question so that we're able to mobilize and start to drive towards those outcomes that we're that we're that we're driving towards. Awesome.
next year, my controller, we're going to have to give my controller access to the agent, see if he can fill out our cyber diligence questionnaire without me having to do any work. That'd be
That would be
cool.
the dream. Awesome. Next slide, please. All right. So where are we at with these agents and how and when will, our customers get access? So just a quick note, all of the AI SOC analyst agents will be available to our MDR customers. The investigative agent is on our roadmap. It's slated for later in 2026. The narrative agent is available today in your environment. And the active response agent coming very soon in January. It's already in beta. And in January, we're going to be launching our first active response agent focused on identities with endpoints coming soon after. From a customer experience agent standpoint, the CTEM agent is available today. Thank you, Matt, for all of your feedback and helping us really get there. The detection advisor agent is in beta as we speak, and it's slated to be GA in Q1. And then the ticket analyzer agent is slated for release in the second half of next year. Awesome. So 5 out of 6 of these agents are available to every MDR customer, with only the CTEM agent being available as you get the CTEM offering from Deepwatch. But 5 out of 6 agents will be available to everyone as a part of your existing MDR contract with Deepwatch. Awesome. All right. Quickly on architecture and security. Next slide, please. We have taken AI very, very, very seriously. As you can imagine, AI has been very good from individual productivity standpoint, but when we start to deploy this in customer environments, we want to make sure that we are making sure that we are doing our best to drive the best experience for our customers. And so what we have done here, one of the big things we have done is OpenAI, who we are using as our sub-processor. We have signed a zero data retention agreement with OpenAI, so that OpenAI actually never ever stores any of their data. By default, they used to do 30 days for any customer, but in Deepwatch's case, it's 0. Each customer's data is actually logically isolated and separated, and Deepwatch is actively also pursuing the ISO 42001 or 42001 expected in 2026. Great. Next slide. Now, last slide for me on the resources front, we have a whole host of resources that are available to our customers. I believe Charlie and team will be sending this out so that customers can learn more about Nexa. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. All that said, Matt, it was truly, truly, truly a pleasure having you with us here today. Thank you for sharing your insights. Any last, I guess, words of wisdom or advice for all of our customers out there that are starting to adopt AI in different ways, shapes, and form?
I guess what I would say is think about your ROI and how you're going to articulate that. I would say, as cyber practitioners, even if we're not adopting AI, the rest of the business is. And so for us to continue to be relevant, we have to tackle the learning curve. So I do perceive that there is value in tackling the learning curve, even if the outcomes are not 100%, or even if you're not getting the ROI that you're hoping for, which I think, based on the research that we highlighted at the top of the hour, may turn out to be the case over the long term. There may be a long plateau of never getting there. But nevertheless, I think understanding the tech and how it works is pretty critical in terms of career growth. And I think people who invest in the understanding this probably have a stronger growth curve in the long term. What else would I say? I think running small experiments and not being afraid to run experiments in tandem is probably important. We do a lot of multi-tracking, right? We did the CTEM agent with you guys, and we also built, as you know, on Snowflake in tandem. And that's been our approach across a lot of these. So like similar to the other agents which you have, we've experimented with internal agents and abilities to pursue those. And the learning has been really great. Even if our outcome, like in the end, we have a small team, and our outcome may never actually compete with the commercial outcomes that the vendor landscape is starting to come forward with. And I think right now there's a lot of capital deployed. There will be some winners and there will be some losers. And so I think as you place your bets, you have to be prepared to confront the most brutal facts, and that includes anticipating there will be some rip and replace, because just as there will be winners, there will be losers, and some of those vendors will disappear or get gobbled up and see their innovation dissipate or whatever. So I don't know. I think that's pretty practical.
Love that. I mean, I love how you've baked in, you have multiple horses in the running. You're constantly placing different bets. You're constantly learning, adapting, and, while there are going to be a few losers, you need the one or two big winners. And, even in finance, that's what does it for a good portfolio, right? You just need that one big winner sometimes. And I love that, you and your entire team are just experimenting left, right, and forward.
Yeah, cool. Well, we appreciate the support and partnership. I think we wouldn't have gotten as far, definitely on this, what we're calling CISO Copilot or CTIM or whatever, without you guys. And so I think it's been a very healthy partnership, and I'm excited about the work we've done so far. So cool that
Likewise.
we get to share it with the broader community.
Likewise. And we have one last poll question, and then we want to open it up for any Q&A. Anyone has any questions for Matt, this is your time.
All right.
Charlie, I'll hand it over to you for the poll.
So, what next step would you find most helpful from Deepwatch? Uh, to Part's point earlier about the slide, you can find all of the resources as well on our website. Everything is under our Nexa 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 section on the website. So feel free to look through there. Feel free to reach out to any one of us. Matt, big thank you to you today, coming out and spending some time and attention with us. Parth, as always, you're a rock star. So really want to appreciate everybody. So give it about another 20 seconds and then I'll share it out.
Hi, Nexa. What's Nexa? Just
Next,
naming. Yeah.
it's a good marketing term. It's kind of like, what's next? So
Okay.
AI,
Gotcha. Cool.
And also, one of the words that I think marketing liked a lot was the word nexus.
Oh, Nexus.
maybe,
Yeah.
To kind of
maybe.
get that there. And so I think everyone has a different origin story for the word Nexa here at Deepwatch.
All right, I want to share these results now. Yeah,
Okay, send me technical documentation and security and architecture. That should be very straightforward. We have everything on our Trust Center online. And quite a few people want to have early access or POV discussion. Awesome. Any questions for Matt or myself? You can use the Q&A box on the bottom of your Zoom.
I think you guys pretty much probably answered all of them. It's such great discussion. So
Check. Check.
yeah, check, definitely.
Wow, Matt. Well, looks like no questions. We seem to have covered a lot of ground here. Thanks again, Matt, for all of your insights and just your partnership through and through.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate it. It was good. It was fun. Yeah, for those folks that are watching, happy to have you connect on LinkedIn. Happy to give you a transparent view. I think, we tried to do this unscripted. I learned a couple of things from Parth along the way. And I think there's a lot of folks just sort of rah promoting. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can and highlight the learning curve that we've been on. So happy to connect and appreciate the opportunity to be here, guys.
We did just get a question in.
Oh,
Uh, is the Nexa chat function compatible with Jira?
The next chat function compatible with Jira. I'm not sure exactly what compatible means here, but some of the experiences that we do want to drive towards is, being able to use Nexa to be able to kind of just quickly fire a ticket away, one click. And that's actually something that we are doing with Matt Sharp and his team shortly here, because we've been learning the process of kind of sending some of that stuff down to Jira. Um, a lot of touch points there. So we want to make it so that from Nexa, once you find an insight, 2 clicks later, 1 click to create the ticket, review the details, 1 click later, you're done. So yes, that is something that is on the roadmap and something we're tracking. Since AI sometimes has a hard time differentiating between instructions and data, how are you tracking this? This is a really good question. We separate the prompt from essentially what Matt had referred to earlier, that structured data that we have. And so they're all essentially happening at two different layers. And before we even go in to get the data, there's a lot of work that our AI agent does to leverage right amounts of context to reduce the universe of questions to drive towards better accuracy. And so in our world, it's actually completely separate. One aspect of it is talking to structured data. The other is the instructions that we've given to AI from the very beginning. And I'd be happy to, walk you through the architecture in an offline discussion. Any other questions? Awesome. I know we're 1 minute over, and so Matt, thank you again. Charlie, thank you very much, and thank you to the audience. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yes. If you guys have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. Website, like Matt said, LinkedIn, Parth is on there as well. You can find us, all over the place. So appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt.